Hello there, my name is Pavel and now we'll unveil the top news of these days. The European Commission recommends starting negotiations on Ukraine's accession to the EU as early as June to demonstrate support for our country before Hungary takes over the bloc's presidency. Brussels is pushing for formal talks with Kyiv and Chisinau to begin this month. The European Commission announced that Ukraine now meets previously unfulfilled criteria. These include anti-corruption measures, restrictions on political lobbying, asset declaration rules for civil servants, and the protection of languages used by national minorities.
The European Commission supports the opening of accession negotiations with Ukraine. Thank you, Ursula von der Leyen, for the positive assessment of our progress towards European integration. Now we expect our European partners to take the next step to start negotiations on EU membership this month. Denis Shmyhal, Prime Minister of Ukraine, on social network X.
It will be recalled that earlier Belgium, which currently chairs the EU, confirmed its intention to organize an intergovernmental conference with Ukraine in June, before the start of Hungary's presidency. On June the 5th, the foreign ministers of 12 EU countries sent a letter to Belgium stating that negotiations with Ukraine and Moldova on joining the EU should begin in June. Euractiv reported, lobbyists for the accession of our country and Moldova to the EU say that the results of the reforms that both countries managed to achieve and their current efforts are in favor of such a decision. Ministers propose to introduce countries to the EU in stages. Ukraine and Moldova can move into separate policies and programs to the EU to fulfill membership. Hungary opposes Ukraine's accession to the EU. Budapest again demands changes from Kyiv, which could relate to the fight against corruption, the rights of national minorities, agriculture, trade, and good neighborly relations. But the EU assumes that Hungary may agree to start negotiations before the start of its presidency. EU ambassadors will consider the issue of starting negotiations on June the 7th already, at which time diplomats can make a political decision. On June 25th, during the Ministerial Council on General Issues of the EU, the negotiation framework for both countries can be agreed. The Minister of European Affairs of the government of the Czech Republic, Martin Dvorak, initiated a letter with a call to the Belgian presidency of the Council of European Union to promote progress in the negotiations on the accession of Ukraine and Moldova. This was reported by Četeka. The letter, initiated by the Czech minister in the name of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Belgium, Agi Laib, was signed by 11 other EU member states, including Sweden, Finland, Lithuania, Germany, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Slovenia, Estonia, Latvia, and Slovakia. The signatories highly appreciate these steps taken by the Belgian EU presidency in the process of Ukraine and Moldova's accession to the EU and emphasize the need to motivate both countries through gradual integration into policies and programs of the EU towards the full membership. EU ambassador in Kyiv, Katerina Maternova, also believes that Ukraine is ready to start negotiations on joining the European Union. It is important to start the process in June because Hungary will take over the rotating presidency of the EU on July the 1st, which will give it additional leverage over the formation of the agenda of meetings where issues related to Ukraine will be discussed. Let me remind you that Ukraine applied for EU membership on the 5th day of the full-scale invasion of Russia, which once again showed that this is one of our biggest goals despite the war. Russia is preparing another PSYOP for $15 million. According to the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, the Kremlin's special services will try to discredit the military leadership of Ukraine, in particular the military intelligence. Agency of the Russian Chekist has already received instructions to organize paid production and distribution of relevant materials in the media space of Ukraine and Western countries. We are talking about a number of articles and films in which they, in particular, plan to reveal the data of the employees of the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine involved in the coordination of the combat work of special units of the security and defense forces of Ukraine. The goal of Russia's next information attack is to discredit Ukrainian combat special forces, their officers and employees, blocking the work of departments that develop and carry out combat and special tasks against Moscow. Creation of another factor of social tension in Ukraine. This is not the first PSYOP against Ukraine this year. Previously, even Putin tried to tell everyone that Zelensky was illegitimate. Operations were also conducted before and during the offensive of Russian troops in the north of the Kharkiv region, which began on May the 10th. There, the efforts of the information forces of the Russian Federation were directed at Ukraine and its Western partners, at the civilian population of Kharkiv, the region and the country as a whole, at the personnel of the defense forces, the military command, and the political leadership of our country. The purpose of the operations was not only to create informational support for hostilities beneficial to Russia, but also to ensure their success by weakening Ukraine as much as possible, explained the Center for Strategic Communications and Information Security of Ukraine. In view of the chosen directions of attack and the resources involved, it can be stated that the Russian troops were given the task of recapturing the city of Vovchansk and mastering the heights in the Vovchansk community. Recapture of Lipsy, Tsirkuni, and neighboring settlements, stretching the front line so that the defense forces of Ukraine were forced to transfer a significant part of personnel and equipment from other directions to the Kharkiv region. This would give the Russians the opportunity to shell Kharkiv with battle and rocket artillery, which is much cheaper than using aviation and missiles. Thanks to the control over the above-mentioned settlements in 2022, Russian MLRS self-propelled guns and howitzers destroyed northern Saltivka and terrorized the entire city for months. Establishing the fire control over one of the largest cities of Ukraine is needed by the Kremlin for increasing pressure on the Ukrainian government and Western partners, demonstrating the ability to conduct offensive actions, weakening the capabilities of the Ukrainian army, preventing the concentration of forces in other directions, creating a humanitarian crisis and provoking panic in Kharkiv region, complicating the situation in other regions too. As of now, the occupiers have only partially implemented their tasks. The offensive was stopped at a distance of 7 to 10 kilometers from the state border. The front line passes through the residential area of Vovchansk and on the approaches to Lipsy. The Russians are unable to bring artillery to the border to hit Kharkiv, so the city is still terrorized mainly with S-300, S-400, Iskander-M missiles, airstrikes and drones. The main shelling claimed the lives of at least 106 civilians in Kharkiv and the region. 543 were injured. In the two previous spring months, the number of dead and wounded civilians was 54 and 245, respectively. The intensity of the destruction of the civilian population by the Russians in May actually increased fourfold compared to March and April. Despite the combination of military, terrorist, and informational components, the Russians failed to fully realize their plan either on the battlefield or in influencing the civilian population of Kharkiv. Due to the deterioration of the security situation, some residents left the city, but instead of panicky moods, the Russians provoked even greater anger of Kharkiv residents against the invaders. And I almost forgot, this senseless attack on Kharkiv contributed to the decision of Ukrainian allies to allow strikes on Russian territory. As always, Putin outplayed everyone. Volodymyr Zelensky is holding a number of meetings in France. In particular, aid to Ukraine will be discussed today at meetings with his French colleagues Emmanuel Macron. Emmanuel Macron himself announced this yesterday. He announced the transfer of several French Mirage-2000 fighter jets to Ukraine and the training of additional Ukrainian servicemen as part of the new cooperation with Kyiv. Macron emphasized also that helping Ukraine resist Russian aggression means avoiding the right of the strongest. In 2024, France will join the training of Ukrainian fighter pilots. To train Mirage-2000 pilots, France will organize a 6-month pilot training course starting this summer, Macron said. In addition, Paris will help with the training of Ukrainian brigade numbering 4,500 troops, which, as Macron emphasized, is not a factor of escalation. The countries also signed 2 agreements that provide Ukraine with 650 million euros in loans and grants to support local authorities and critical infrastructure, including energy, which is targeted by Russia every day. Volodymyr Zelensky also met with the chairman of the National Assembly of France and heads of committees, and he spoke before the deputies.
These days, we honor the bravery of the people and the mutual support of the nation that won the Battle of Normandy, the ones who won. And it is the victory that is still being felt on Omaha Beach, where we were yesterday with the president, with Emmanuel and other leaders. It is the victorious battle that people remember there and take pride in being able to follow in the footsteps of its participants, the warriors who were very different from different countries, but equally eager for freedom to prevail. It was precisely such one battles here in Normandy and in Eastern Europe, in the northern seas of our our continent and in the skies of Britain, in southern Europe, and in the underground resistance movements in the countries occupied by the Nazis that returned Europe to humanity. Without those battles won, there would be nothing. There would be no one. There would be no us. Ukraine, France, all free nations. There would be no free individual in Europe either, as the concept of as a possibility of real freedom.
Also today, Volodymyr Zelensky held a meeting with US President Joe Biden. At the meeting, he announced a new package of military aid to Ukraine in the amount of $225 million. CNN correspondent Natalia Bertrand reported. AP colleagues added that the American president apologized to Zelensky for the delays in aid. By the way, yesterday during the celebration of the D-Day remembrance, a rather extraneous incident took place. One of the veterans of the Second World War tried to kiss Zelensky's hand, but he stopped him in time and thanked for the saving of Europe. Instead, Moscow, which is trying to claim all the victories over Nazism, could not find veterans to celebrate Victory Day in May. A member of the NKVD who killed Ukrainians in the Lviv region in 1944 and the head of the operation to suppress protests in Prague in 1968 were placed next to Putin. There are no real veterans in Russia anymore because the standard of living in this country is critically low. And they want to spread their attitude towards veterans to Ukrainians. Sorry, no need. By the way, let's D-Day heroes express admiration for the struggle of the Ukrainian people against the Russian aggression right now. And we express our admiration for the soldiers who fought against the Nazi evil of the last century and those who are doing it now on the Russian-Ukrainian front lines. That concludes our today's video. Thank you for watching. Stay updated, comment, like and subscribe to our UATV English channel for more news from Ukraine. It is your support that really matters for us. Goodbye.